Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Midweek Peak. So just like last week, there will be some updates about some book awards that's been announced recently, some new releases and a couple of book related news. And we will wrap up with 8 picks from my recent crime, psychological, police procedural thriller reads. So without further ado, let's get into it. If you don't know me already, my name is Angela, your own bookaholic brown name. And if you love books, don't shy away from subscribing to my channel because all I talk about is books and books over here. And I also have a Bookstagram page with the same name, link in the description. Go ahead and follow me there as well. Each year, Australians vote for their favorite book of the year, and these books need not be books that were released particularly that year, but basically the books that they favor that year. And the list for this year is out now. Basically, the books are from crime fiction, general women's fiction, literary fiction, and classics. And the book that topped this year's list is Where Crawdads Sing. This book is extremely popular. This won the New York Times Fiction Bestsellers of 2019 and New York Times Fiction Bestsellers of 2020, and also it was chosen for Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine Book Club in September 2018 and for Barnes & Noble's Best Books of 2018. And by December 2019, around 4.5 million copies of these books were sold. And so basically this is an extremely popular book, very well read book. So this is also part of my TBR this year. I will definitely read it. Now the story follows 2 timelines that slowly intertwine. The first timeline describes the life and adventures of a young girl named Kia as she grows up pretty much isolated in the marsh of North Carolina during the period from 1952 to 1969. And the second timeline follows a murder investigation of a person called Chase Andrews, a local celebrity of Barkley Cove. It is a fictional town based in North Carolina. So that's a book that topped the list. There are other popular books and classics like To Kill a Mockingbird and Pride and Prejudice that made into the list. One interesting thing to note in this list is that Australians love their female authors. 65 out of the 100 authors were female, and out of the top 10, 4 of them were female Australian authors. So yeah, they love their female authors. If you're interested in looking into the entire list, I will link that in the description. Go ahead and check it out. The British Book Awards was also announced recently, and I will straight get into the winners. The first award is Book of the Year overall, and this was won by Shuggie Bain by Douglas Stewart, and this book had already won Booker Prize of 2020. This is a dazzling debut by Douglas Stewart. The story is based in 80s Glasgow and follows the story of Hugh Shuggie Bain, who spends his pivotal year in public housing. The story explores Margaret Thatcher's politics and also portrays the story of working class British families, which is a rare thing to see. But Stewart does this in a powerful way by following Shuggie and his mother's intimate, challenging and compassionate story. Book of the Year fiction was won by Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is a book that has been recommended by many booktubers, so it's definitely something I'm going to read in the next 12 months time. And next is an interesting thing. There is a category called Book of the Year Page Turner, and this was won by the same book which topped the Better Reading Top 100 Australia, which is Where the Crawdads Sing. So definitely this comes highly recommended by book readers and also by the award judges. Now, what was unexpected and surprising was what happened with Book of the Year non-fiction. I mentioned this earlier in this video, and the likes of Sir Captain Tom Moore and Barack Obama were nominated for this category, but it was a 17-year-old boy who won this award, and the book is called The Diary of a Young Naturalist by Dara McNulty, and this is a memoir and follows the story of the teenage star of the British show Country File as he opens up about his autism and his interest in the natural world, providing mature advice and knowledge about British wildlife and hope for the future in this beautiful memoir. So that was something exciting that happened in the British Book Awards. Another thing I discovered is that for the British Book Awards, they award Book of the Year Non-Fiction Lifestyle, and this was won by Carolyn Herron's Skincare, the Ultimate No-Nonsense Guide. And that came as a surprise that they provide an award for non-fiction lifestyle award. So that was kind of a new knowledge for me. Did you know about this? The best audiobook was won by Jay Shetty for his book Think Like a Monk. I think, and I wanted to mention this because most of you might be listening to Jay Shetty and he's quite popular, so I thought it was worth mentioning. You can watch the entire award ceremony in the British Book Awards website. I will link that in the description. And also you can check out who were the winners in the other categories that I have not mentioned here, if you're interested. Before we move into the next segment where I recommend 8 books from thrillers that I read this year, I would like to give you a brief note from an interesting news from the book world. So there is a book that was written back in 1930s by a German guy called Ulrich Alexander Boschwitz, and the book was called The Passenger. Now, this was a book about the persecution of Jews in Germany in 1938. It was written and it was forgotten about. Nobody had heard about this book. But this book was rediscovered in 2018 when the niece of the author talked about this to an author, and it was published and it started receiving stellar reviews, and it has now entered this Sunday Times list of top 10 hardback fiction bestsellers. It was written weeks after Kristallnacht, which is the outbreak of mass violence against Jews in Germany in November 1938. So that's an interesting news. So a novel that was written back in the 1930s, which was forgotten about, rediscovered 80 years henceforth and becoming bestseller. That's noteworthy news I thought that you should know about. Finally, we have reached the last segment of this particular episode. Here is where I talk about 8 of my recommendations from my recent crime, psychological, police procedural thrillers that I have read recently. The first one is The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. He is a very popular crime thriller novelist. So the plot is like this. On a night flight from London to Boston, a guy called Ted Severson meets a woman called Lily Kidner. They have a couple of martini while waiting in the airport lounge, and also some more on the flight, and they start having conversations, and they start spilling truth about their lives. And Ted says that he is in a stale marriage because he just found out that his wife is cheating on him, and how he wants to kill her. And suddenly Lily says that, hey, I can help you with that. And as the conversation progresses, Ted realizes that Lily is not joking about killing his wife part, and they decide to meet later on to carry on with their plan. The rest of the story is what happens when these two co-conspirators continue planning how to kill Ted's wife. And also we get to know, or we get the sense that Lily is not that forthcoming about her past, which is somehow intertwined with Ted's life. So to find out what happens, you need to read The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. Next 2 books 2 and 3 that I'm going to recommend are part 1 and part 2, or book 1 and book 2 of a 4-part series of a crime thriller called Stillhouse Lake series by Rachel Kane. So the first book is called Stillhouse Lake. The second book is called Kilman Creek. So this story follows the story of a woman called Gina Royal. So she is this stereotypical Midwestern American housewife, very happy with her 2 children and husband. Incidentally, when none of them are there in their family home, a car crashes into the garage. It is revealed that her husband is a serial killer. What happens next is that people and the society start pinning her together with her husband. This couldn't have happened without her knowledge, and at the end the court acquits her. She is forced to flee from that home because of society bullying them, and also cyber bullies and internet trolls. She is extremely bullied and threatened, and she skips town every time when they are discovered in a new place. So finally they reach this place called Stillhouse Lake, where nobody knows about their past. They try to settle down finally, but all of a sudden there is a body that surfaces in the lake, and suspicions start building on her. Eventually people and the police discover her past. She starts getting threatening letters from internet trolls and anonymous people. This story particularly spoke to me because this shows a close picture of what a victim of cyberbullying goes through, the kind of trauma that they go through, and also the extent to which a mother can go to protect her children. This was very heartwarming, at the same time unsettling at some points, very creepy, and scary at some point. So yes, this is a very great thriller for you to read. I will not speak much about Kilman Creek, the book 2, because if I have to speak, then I will have to give away some spoilers from book 1. So just check out the series, it's good. I am planning to read 3 and 4 very soon. Next up is a psychological thriller by Greg Olson, which is called The Last Thing She Ever Did. This is a story about a quaint American town by the river of Deschutes, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. There are nice, well-off, wealthy American upper-class family living along this river. It's also a holiday spot. There are a lot of tourists coming and going. The story is about 2 families. One is of Liz and Owen, and the other is of Carol and David and their son Charlie. Everything seems to be nice and happy until one day Charles, Carol and David's son, disappears, vanishes into thin air, and a search ensues. Police come in and divers come in to check the river, and the body is not found, the child is not found at all. And as the story progresses, we as readers find out that the whole disappearance has something to do with an unintentional mistake that Liz has committed, and the panic that she is going through while the mother and father are searching frantically for their kid. And later on, we find out that there is more to what we know and more to what Liz knows about this boy's disappearance, and what is it. And to find out what that mystery is, you need to read the book The Last Thing She Ever Did by Greg Olson. Next up is a British police procedural crime thriller, which is book 1 of a series of book D.I. Amy Winter book series, and the book is called Truth and Lies by Carolyn Mitchell. Detective Inspector Amy Winter, she is a very ambitious police officer, and she wants to follow in the footsteps of her late father, who was also a police inspector in the force. And that's when she receives a letter from the prison written by one Lily Grimes, and Lily Grimes was one half of the husband and wife serial killer back in the 70s, and she is incarcerated. And this lady Lily Grimes, she is a psychopath, she is dangerous, she is pure evil, and she is Amy Winter's biological mother. And when Amy Winter finds that out, she is shocked, she is devastated, and at the same time she and her fellow officers are investigating the disappearance of a girl who was abducted from her neighbor's doorstep. And then in the letter from Lily Grimes, Amy finds out that she's telling that she will help her find or locate the bodies of the victim her husband killed in the serial killing spree back in the 70s, if Amy plays along with her demand. And the book is all about what happens after that and what is Lily Grimes' whole game plan. To find out that, do read Truth and Lies by Carolyn Mitchell. Another British crime thriller, police procedural, psychological, all together blended in one. This is Her Last Move by John Mars. This follows the story of Detective Superintendent Becca Vincent, and she basically is trying hard to juggle between personal life, where she has to care for her daughter, and professional life, which is kind of risky right now, and she has to give her complete attention so that she can retain her job. And she lands in the middle of a high profile investigation of a serial killing that's happening in London, and she gets assistance from a police super recognizer called Joe Russell, and both of them team up to find out what's happening and who is behind this serial killing. And what she doesn't know is that the killer is extremely meticulous. He is planned, there is reason behind the killing, and that she is being watched by this killer. So to find out what happens in this nail-biting crime thriller, do read Her Last Move by John Mars. Next up is a very dark, creepy, but humorous psychological thriller. I know these words do not go together, but that's exactly how one can describe the next book in my list, which is Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. Basically, this is a story about this woman called Jane. She is a self-diagnosed sociopath, you can say. She knows that she is a sociopath. She knows that she is non-empathetic. She knows and feels differently from others in situations, where others feel pain, others feel empathy, and she is working in a Midwest insurance company in a very menial data entry kind of job, nothing remarkable, and she wears plain floral clothes and do not stand out, but somehow she manages to seduce this mid-level manager called Stephen Hepsworth and start dating him. And she puts up this image of this very quaint, shy, woman, who is not that outgoing, which is exactly the kind of woman Stephen Hepsworth is fond of. While the relationship is progressing, we find out that Stephen is basically a gaslighting, misogynist rascal. She is constantly being abused, if not physically, but at least verbally and mentally. She is always being abused by this guy. But then we get the feeling, is Jane really the person that she is telling she is? Is she really a mid-level, not so remarkably intelligent person, or not? And if she's not, then why is she putting up this act? What is her intent? To find out the answer to this, read the book Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. Trespassing by Brandy Reeds is the last book in my list of recommendations today. This is a book that I just finished reading yesterday. So the story is about a woman called Veronica Cavanaugh. She's a housewife and she is going through fertility treatment, but generally she is having a happy life with her husband and her daughter Elizabella. And because of her treatment and medication, she is kind of disoriented and unstable and not there as such. One day her husband, who is a pilot, fails to return from work, and at the same time her daughter, she has an imaginary friend, which children at that age of 3 or 4 tend to have. They try to create imaginary friend and have conversations with them, and this girl's imaginary friend Nini, she says that she told is Elizabella that her dad has gone to Godland, or basically he is dead. And is that a premonition, or is that a prediction, or is that some kind of clairvoyance? She doesn't know, but that turns out to be true. And she's extremely devastated when she finds out that her husband is no more, and whatever is left of her unstable life, it crumbles further. And later, as the story progresses, we get to know that there is more to his disappearance or death than what the police or the situation is showing or indicating. Because of her unstable condition, and also because in her family there is a history of mental illness, she starts to doubt herself, whether she is imagining things or not, because she gets a feeling that somebody is following her, and her, she and her daughter are in danger. And she gets a key to a house which is in her name in Florida Keys. So she goes there, and the story unravels from there. And then we find out what happened to her husband. It is really edge of the seat thriller. Do read it. If you love psychological crime thrillers, you will definitely love this as well. So those were the 8 psychological crime thrillers that I wanted to recommend this time. So guys, that was my Midweek Peak episode. If you liked it, please go ahead, subscribe to my channel, like and share it, and also please be back for my next video. Bye bye.